Hello friends, so let us continue our discussion on describing planes and direction and points within the unit cell. So the overall goal of our discussion is that we want to see how the imposed mechanical condition brings about a change within the material, particularly at the atomistic level. Now since we are largely confined our discussion to crystalline material, the arrangement of the atoms can be represented by the unit cell. And as we know that depending on the plane and direction, even though we impose an identical mechanical condition externally, depending on the plane and direction, the components of stresses experienced by the material within it varies. And therefore, when you want to talk about the response of the material at the atomistic level, we want to distinguish different planes and directions. And that we have been doing it, or we have been considering it within the unit cell, because unit cell is the representation of the overall arrangement of the atoms within a material, particularly crystalline system. So in the previous lecture, we saw how we can represent or describe a plane within the unit cell. We considered the points and we also considered the plane. Now our discussions have largely been confined to cubic material or cubic systems. So the characteristic features of this cubic system are the dimensions of the unit length or the unit cell is equal. So and the angular dimensions are also equal. So ultimately the unit cell that we have been considering so far would look something like this. So this is our frame of reference or the principal axis, and the unit cell would look something like this. So the dimensions, the lengthwise dimensions are equal, and also the angular dimensions are equal to 90 degrees. So ultimately you would have a cube. Now in the previous lecture we saw, when we want to talk about a plane, there are three different steps that we need to take in order to describe the plane using integers. So these three steps involve first considering the intercepts made by the plane in individual frames of reference or principal axis. So the term individual is important. It is not the point where the plane meets as in the whole of the frame of reference, but the intercept the plane makes with individual frame of reference. And then once you have for each frame of reference, for each axis, you have a definite point wherein the plane meets your individual axis, then you take the reciprocal of it and then you factorize it. Intercept, reciprocal, and then you factorize it. So meaning you will get rid of the dimension value, that is A, or the lengthwise dimension of the unit cell, that is A, and you try to ensure that you don't represent the values as a fraction but rather as an integers, and this we refer to as the Miller indices. And these Miller indices are enclosed by the curved brackets, and when you see three Miller indices or three numbers enclosed by a curved bracket separated by a comma, then you would know that that particular representation or that particular set of number represents a plane within the unit cell. Now let us continue and see how one can describe a direction within the unit cell. So we have our x-axis here, we have our y-axis here, we have our z-axis here. Now by the end of the previous lecture we saw that it is possible for us to identify equivalent planes or family of planes. So that is, you can fix the Miller indices and you can change or play around with the frames of reference and the origin, and you would see that for a given set of Miller indices you could arrive at different planes. You could talk about different planes, and these planes are equivalent planes, and these are referred to as the family of planes, and they are enclosed by the Floer bracket. Miller indices enclosed by the Floer bracket means we are considering all the equivalent planes. So these discussions, so all this discussion, it pertains to the way to describe a plane within the unit cell using Miller indices. Now let us move to representing or describing a direction within the unit cell. For that, let us consider a direction which is something like this. You have a point here which is represented by, say, A, comma, A, comma, A. So all these dimensions are A, and you have a point here that is represented by A, comma, A, comma, A. If you factorize it, you will get 1, comma, 1, comma, 1. Unfortunately, there should not be any brackets here, so forgive me. Now we have a direction that starts from the origin and it is along this direction. So it moves towards the point A, comma, A, comma, A, or this corner here. Now we want to describe this direction. The way to describe this direction within the unit cell is to project this direction to the principal axis. So in order to project this direction to the principal axis, the easiest direction to, or easiest way to project this direction, or the easiest axis to which this direction could be projected to, is the z axis. So the way to project it is here. I just drawing the sight line and then seeing where this projection meets. So when you draw a straight line, this projection meets here, and this point is off length. So this line here, so this point is 8 times away from the origin. So the projection of this direction onto the z axis meets here, and this point is 8 times away from the origin. Now we want to see where the projection of this direction leads or meets in the x and y direction. So we first project it onto the x and y plane, that is here, and then from that point we move to the y direction, the y axis and the x axis. So from here we project it to the x y plane, and from there we point towards or move towards the principal axis, that is x and the y axis. And similar to the z axis, in x and y axis as well, the projection meets at a point which are displaced by a length of a from the origin. So the direction that is in red, the solid red, when you project it onto the principal axis, you would find they meet at a point that has been shifted by a distance a from the origin. Now this point we can write it down as a, comma, a, comma, a. Now when you factorize it, you end up with 1, comma, 1, comma, 1. And when you enclose this with a square bracket, you are talking about the direction. So the way to calculate a direction is you have to project the direction to the different principal axis, and then you have to consider the point the projection meet in those principal axis, and then you have to quantify that point, and then finally you have to factorize that point. So here we projected this point to z axis, and we projected it to the xy plane, and subsequently projected it to y and x axis, and we got the points a, comma, a, comma, a for each axis individually, not as a whole. For each axis individually, the point where the projection of this direction meet, we have included for x, y and the z axis. So for x axis individually, the projection meets at this point, which is away from the origin by a distance of a. Same goes for y axis and the z axis. These again is individually, not cumulatively as a point, individually. And then you factorize it by dividing each and every term by a, you ultimately end up with 1, comma, 1, comma, 1. So this, when enclosed by the square brackets, represent the direction. And this again, we have, these indices are referred to as the Miller indices, which we have considered here. And when Miller indices are enclosed by a square bracket, they represent a direction. Now let us try to consider another direction to establish or enhance our understanding. So let us consider the unit cell which we have considered in the previous section, a cubic one with equal unit cell dimension and the angle 90 degree. So you have your frame of reference which are mutually perpendicular, and the unit cell that we have is of the dimensions are equal. So we have, of course, a characteristic or typical cubic unit cell. Now here let us consider a direction that is perpendicular or that is parallel to the 1, 1, 1 that we have considered here, but it starts from here. So we have a direction, let me have it in blue. So it is parallel to 1, 1, 1, but it starts not at the origin, but here. Now how can one identify the Miller indices to represent this particular, or rather, this should be like this. So it's parallel to 1, 1, 1. So how can one identify the Miller indices for a direction that does not start from origin? Now, we need to, as we have seen in the previous, or we saw that in order to find the indices for the direction, we have to project the direction to the different individual axes. Now here the projection becomes difficult because our direction doesn't go through the point of origin. Therefore, there are two ways you can go about it. One is to construct a parallel direction that goes through the origin, or the other ways is to shift the origin or whole of the framework. So whole of the frame of reference you can shift to this point here. So let me do that in black. So you can shift the whole of the frame of reference and ensure that the origin coincides with this point here, or you can construct a parallel direction to the desired direction through the origin. So there are two ways you can identify the Miller indices of a direction that does not go through origin. So we are trying to identify Miller indices for direction that does not go through the origin. So the one way is to do it is by constructing a parallel direction that goes through the origin, or the other way is to shift the frame of reference. So this is therefore our frame of reference. Yeah, why not? So these are the two ways one can identify the Miller indices for a plane or a direction rather that does not pass through an origin. So once you are able to establish a direction that passes through the origin, then the procedure remains the same. You try to project the direction to the different frames of reference or the principal axis individually, identify the points where the projection meets each of these references individually, and then factorize them and enclose them in the square bracket. That would give you the Miller or that would represent a specific direction. Now, if you have a direction that is given something like this, so you have a unit cell, and here we want to consider a direction something like this. So this is how the direction that you want to talk about or you want to represent is given by this. So how would you then talk about a direction something like this, wherein your direction, it does not reach your unit cell, it is confined within the unit cell. Now it is possible for you to consider the projection it makes with this axis, and it does not make any projection here, and it does not make the projection here. Then you would say it would be 1 by 2a of 0, 0. And now similarly you can do, if the projection is within the unit cell and thereby you have, or if the direction is within the unit cell, you can make projection for all the different axes, that is principal axes, that is x, y and z. However, since the parallel directions are equivalent, they are more or less the same, or rather they are identical, and we are exclusively talking about the direction, not the magnitude of it, the general way to characterize or to represent the direction is to allow it to reach the end of the unit cell. So even though this direction and the direction that reaches till the end of the unit cell is the same, they follow the same direction, and they are identical when you talk about the way they are pointed or the way they are oriented. The only thing that varies is the magnitude, and since exclusively what we are doing here is to express the direction in terms of the Miller lattice, so whenever you have a direction that is confined, that does not meet the ends of the unit cell, the best way of representing it is to extend it to the end of the unit cell and then try to express it. So here this should rather be 0 comma 1 by 2 comma a because it is pointed in the y direction. So now when you have the extended version of this direction wherein we allow the direction to meet the end of the unit cell, then we would represent that as 0. It does not make any projections along the x-axis, but it makes a projection along the y-axis, or it is along the y-axis and it meets here at 1. And now it does not have any, or rather a, it does not have any projection along the z-axis. And now we factorize it, you ultimately end up with 0 comma 1 comma 0. So 0 comma 1 by 2 comma 0, which you factorize it would be 0 comma 2 comma 0, is similar to that of the 0 comma 1 comma 0. And now you can again divide this by 2, you will ultimately end up with this here. So what we mean or what we want to get through this representation is that whenever your direction is confined within the unit cell, the best way to arrive at a definite Miller indices, a factorized one, the smallest way to represent, or the best way to represent the direction would be to allow it to reach the end of the unit cell. So when you allow it to reach the end of the unit cell, then you would be able to directly calculate the Miller indices that represent the direction. Now supposing, so it does not mean that the fraction value will not be included in the Miller indices. So for that, let us consider an example something like this. So let's have a unit cell with R frames of reference, that is x, y and z. So we have a cubic unit cell and so let us get rid of this ambiguity here. So we have a cubic unit cell and you have a direction from the origin to a, so that is from the origin and it's along this way, or it is oriented in this way. So it meets the unit cell here. Now let us try to project this point onto the principal axis. So along this x-axis, along the z-axis, it is quite straightforward. The projection meets the principal z-axis at A. And now let us first try to project it onto the xy plane, and it meets the projection meets the xy plane here. And when you want to plot the projection of this direction from the xy plane to the corresponding principal axis, then it meets the x-axis at a by 2 and it meets the y-axis at a. So when you factorize it, you will end up, or when you get rid of the a, you will end up with 1 by 2 comma 1 comma 1, and when you multiply the overall everything by 2, you will end up with 1 comma 2 comma 2. So this direction is nothing but 1 comma 2 comma 2. So what we understand from this depiction, or from this curve, or from this direction, is that the 1 by 2 can be introduced within the Miller indices to describe the direction within the unit cell, even though it touches the unit cell. It doesn't mean that 1 by 2 occurs only when the direction is confined within the unit cell. Even when you allow the direction to touch the unit cell or move across the unit cell, you will be able to have fractions in the Miller indices. But ultimately, you get rid of that fraction by factorizing the whole term or multiplying it by 2. So this is the direction 1, 2, 2 that we have shown here, and we have represented it using the Miller indices. So this we have represented using the Miller indices. Now let us go back to our simpler consideration, even more simpler consideration. So we have our cubic unit cell. So we let us consider a simple orientation or simple direction that is oriented along this line here. So we have already seen. So if you assume this to be x-axis, your y-axis and the z-axis, we have already seen it doesn't, this particular direction doesn't or the projection of it doesn't involve or doesn't touch the x-axis or the y-axis. So that means, so everything is rather confined to the y-axis. It does not touch the z-axis or the x-axis. The projection of it does not touch the x-axis or the z-axis. So ultimately everything lies on the y-axis. So and it touches the y-axis at A. So you would write the actual indices of this as 0, a, 0, and then you normalize it and include it in the square bracket. It will be 0, 1, 0. Now we can play around with the frame of references like we did in case of the planes. When we want to talk about the family of planes, we can play around with the frame of reference. You can shift your x here and y here. So if you do that, if you shift your x here and y here and the z would remain the same, then your direction would be 1, 0, 0. And now if you shift your z here and x here, then it would be 0, 0, 1. And now if you shift your origin here and then you calculate, or you want to, or you shift your origin here to a different unit cell and you calculate, you can also end up with the negative value, which usually in the Miller integers is written over on top of the integers. The negative sign is usually written on top of the integers. So this is something that is that you would have been familiar with. So by shifting the by playing around with the frame of references, by shifting the point of origin, you would be able to arrive at different set of integers representing the same direction. This we refer to as the family of planes or family of directions, and these are represented by the bracket like this. So the family of directions is represented by a bracket like this. The similar way, one can also represent different directions for a given frame of reference and identify them to be equivalent. So when you compare this direction 1 with 2 and 3, you can identify or arrive at same sets of Miller integers. You can express all these direction 1, 2 and 3 using same sets of Miller integers by playing around with the frame of reference. And that means all these three directions are equivalent, and they make the family of directions. So one way of identifying family of direction is by fixing a definite line and a definite direction and playing around with the frame of reference. The other way is to consider different planes or different directions rather, and then trying to arrive at the same expression or same Miller integers, or trying to use same Miller integers for the different directions. So by these two operations, you will be able to identify the family of directions, and this family of direction is represented using this bracket here. So now what we have seen is, we have seen a way to represent or describe the direction within a plane. We have seen a way to represent the plane within a unit cell, a direction within the unit cell, a plane within the unit cell, and a point within the unit cell. So we saw that we can treat the individual variables or the individual Miller integers as a variable in the form of h, k and l. So in general sense or a conventional sense, these terms are used to represent the Miller indices, and these are the variables, so they can assume any number, any integer form they want, and each of the integer form they would represent a particular direction. And similarly for the plane, the Miller integers in the form of the variables are represented in this manner. So this would represent a direction, and this would represent a plane, and these are variables, and they can assume any integer values. Now when these variables are equal, when you consider the direction and the plane, when you have same variables like this, say we make these variables as constants, say h1, k1 and l1, h1, k1 and n1. Now these are no longer variables, but they are constants. So you have same integers in both plane and direction, then these planes and directions are perpendicular to each other. So you represent a direction using a set of Miller integers, and you use the same Miller integers for the plane, then you would have a plane and a direction that are perpendicular to each other. So let us see if this holds true. So instead of proving it, let us just plot the different planes and direction for a given set of Miller integers and see if this holds true. So let us begin by constructing a unit cell. So this is a cubic unit cell, and for the sake of this discussion, let us assume h is equal to k, or h is equal to 1, or rather easiest way is h equal to k and L and is equal to 1. So all these are equal to 1. So that means, so each of these values assume 1. So let us begin by considering a plane of this form 1, 1, 1. So what this means is that, so you can from these Miller integers you can then try to plot the plane within the unit cell. If you could recollect, in order to plot or in order to represent a plane within the unit cell, we first consider the intercept and take the reciprocal of it and then factorize it. Now it shows that when all these Miller integers are equal, then it means that the intercept that a plane makes within the unit cell is equal. So along in all these three axes, x, y and z, the intercept the plane makes along the x direction, y direction, or x axis, y axis and the z axis individually. So the intercept the plane that we are considering, that is 1, 1, 1 plane, it makes individually along the x axis, y axis and the z axis is the same. Now we want to take the reciprocal, or we took the reciprocal of it while designating or while describing the plane. So if you could recollect the flow or how we did it, the methodology of it, we considered the intercepts, we took the reciprocal of it and then we factorized it. Now when we consider the intercept, we considered it in terms of the dimensions of the unit cells, that is A. The intercepts were calculated in terms of the dimensions of the unit cells, that is A, and then when we factorized it, and tried to remove the A. So that means the reciprocal of this would be again 1, 1, 1, and when you try to include it, it will be A, comma A, comma A. So that means the intercept, we are trying to reverse engineer it. We saw in the previous lecture on how to arrive at the Miller integers for the plane. We take the intercepts, reciprocal it and factorize it. Now we are reverse engineering it. We have already the factorized integers. We are trying to reciprocal it, and then we are trying to introduce the dimensions of the unit cell. So we have A, comma A, comma A. So it means the plane makes an intercept individually along the x axis at point A, and along the y axis at point A, and along the z axis at point A. Now the plane then would look like something in this manner. So this we have seen in the previous lecture as well. So we have now reverse engineered it from the Miller integers and we are able to plot the plane. Now we want to use the same indices for the direction. So we want to use the same indices for the direction. Representing it's quite straightforward, or it's just you change the bracket. It would be something like this. Now if you consider the way we calculate or we arrive at a representation for the direction is we consider the projection of the orientation or the direction. So along the x plane, the projection meets the fundamental or the principal x axis at 1, and it meets the fundamental or the principal y axis at 1. So now we have to, this is a factorized one, so we have to talk in terms of the unit dimension of the unit cell. So it meets the x axis at A, it meets the y axis at A, and similarly it meets the z axis at A. So first let us consider the projection, or let us try to project this point along the xy plane. So you begin by projecting this point along the xy plane and this point along the xy plane. So we meet at a point here, and similarly when we try to project this point here along this, and when we try to project this point along the z direction, you would project it in this way, and this at point A, when you try to project it so that these two projections intersects here, you end up with the point here. So what you have done is you began by projecting this point here along the xy plane and this point along the xy plane as well. So points from the fundamental or principal x-axis and the y-axis, you begin to projecting these points along this plane and you meet at this point here. And this point you begin to project along the z-axis, and then you do the same for the point here. And these two projections meet at this point here. So ultimately, since your direction should begin from the origin, you end up with a direction something like this. So what you have is a plane that is represented in blue, and you have a direction that is represented in red. So if you can notice, it is possible, or it is conceivable, that the direction and the plane, they do not lie on each other, but the direction and the plane that have the same Miller indices are perpendicular to each other. Now you can do the same for a simpler consideration, like if you have a simple unit cell like this, you can just try it out and see what happens when you have, see, this is your x-axis, your y-axis and a z-axis. When you have the Miller indices, that is 1, 0, 0. So 1, 0, 0 as a plane would represent this, because that is the intercept. The plane would make individually along the frame of reference or along the principal axis x. It doesn't have any intercepts along the x and the or y and the z direction. Now similarly, when you talk about the direction, the only direction or only non-zero term is along the principal axis of x, and therefore the direction would be in this way. So this shows clearly that when you have similar or identical Miller indices that represents the plane and the direction, then in that case the plane and the direction are perpendicular to each other. So similar indices means the similar indices to represent, so this to represent a plane using this indices would be 1, 0, 0, and the direction would be 1, 0, 0, and these are perpendicular to one another. So this is the relation between plane and a direction when they have the identical Miller indices. Now, so far what we have been looking at is the cubic system, so cubic crystal system. Now let us move away from the cubic crystal system and see a different crystal system which is of this form like this. So irrespective of whatever crystal system you take, you begin with the principal axis or the frame of references. So we will stick to the frame of reference that we have considered. You have your x-axis here, you have your y-axis here, you have your z-axis here. Now this frame of reference or this particular unit cell, it's quite different from the cubic one, both in the lengthwise dimension and also in the longitudinal dimension or angular dimension rather. So this is the unit cell that now we are focusing on. So this unit cell, let us assume the dimension of this unit cells to be along the x-axis A, along the y-axis B, and along the z-axis C. Now in this unit cell is characterized by the equality between A and B, but it is not equal to that of C. So A and B are equal, but C is not equal. So you have equality between these two dimensions, but the C is not equal to these two. And similarly, the angular dimensions also vary. So if you assume this to be alpha, if you assume this to be beta, and this to be gamma, you have an equality between beta and gamma, and that is 90 degrees, but alpha is 120 degrees. So this particular unit cell is of this form. If you introduce all the characteristic dimension directly, then it would be of this form, wherein this is equal to A, this is equal to A. So you have your x, y and z, but this will continue to remain C. And this angle is 90 degrees, this angle is 90 degrees, but this angle is 120 degrees. So what we essentially have here is a unit cell that is different from that of the cubic unit cell, wherein A is equal to B is equal to C, and alpha is equal to beta is equal to gamma is 90 degrees. But this unit cell here, A is not equal to B, and or rather A is equal to B but not equal to C, and gamma is 120 degree, alpha and beta are 90 degrees. So this unit cell we refer to it as the hexagonal unit cell. So this is the unit cell that represent the external closed pack arrangement. So this term you would have already come across. So hexagonal closed pack system, the unit cell represents the external closed pack crystal structure is of this form, and it is characterized by the equivalence between two dimensions, and the third dimension is not equal, and most of the time it is greater, and there is one angular dimension that is of 120 degrees. Now the hexagonal closed pack structure is usually represented by or when you want to represent the hexagonal closed pack arrangements of the atom, or particularly the term HCP, which you can relate to the topics that you have seen in other courses. Now, if you could recollect, the way the hexagonal closed pack structure is represented is of this form. You would have an actual hexagonal structure, so that is much more relatable to you, and you try to relate these two hexagons. So as of now, let us forget about the set of atoms that lie in between. So what we have is an hexagonal structure of this form. So now let me try to make it as legible as possible. This should be rather larger, this would be smaller, this should be rather larger, and this should be smaller, and this should be somewhere in between. So you have this, and you have this. Okay. So we have some sort of a regular hexagon. Now let us for this moment forget about the atoms that occur or that is placed between these points here. Now let's just focus on the overall structure of this. Now this structure, it comprises of more than one unit cell. So the way you can identify that this structure is comprised of more than one unit cell is by considering these sections, or rather these sections. So if you consider these sections, particularly the one that is highlighted in red, and do the same here, then ultimately you could see there are, and drop a central line here. So you could see there are three unit cells that comprises of this structure here. So the first unit cell or the outline of it can be seen in the red. So you have the unit cell 1, the unit cell 2, and the unit cell 3. So what you essentially have is the hexagonal closed pack structure that we generally see, that is used to generally represent the arrangement of atoms. It comprises of 3 unit cells. Now in this case, when we want to represent, say, this direction here, so we have our x-axis, we have our y-axis, and then we have our z-axis with respect to our unit cell. We have our x-axis, we have our y-axis, and we have our z-axis. Now let us try to represent this direction here. So this direction as the projection along the x-axis, and this projection, so the dimension of these are A, and this is C. So we want to try to represent this particular direction here. So this direction makes a projection along the x-axis at A, and along the y-axis or in the y frame of reference or the y principal axis along A, and it doesn't make any projection, or the projection of this direction doesn't meet anywhere along the z-axis, so it is 0. Now when you normalize it, it will be 1, 1, 0. Now this direction, when you consider for the unit cell that is 2, when you consider this particular direction for the second unit cell whose origin is here, so the origin of the second unit cell is O, and you want to plot this direction, then this direction will be this one here, and for this origin, this would be the frame of reference, that is x, and for this origin, for the second unit cell, the frame of reference, this would be y and this would be z. This is for the second unit cell. So let us just differentiate it with a bar. For the second unit cell, which is also the part of the hexagonal closed packing, what we have is this direction has a projection only along the one principal axis. So that is along the x bar. So you represent the same direction with respect to that of the second unit cell by a, 0, 0. And then when you factorize it, it will be 1, 0, 0. Now, usually these two are equivalent directions, so they must be enclosed as the equivalent or a family of direction. However, there is a difficulty in this, meaning whenever you talk about a cubic system, the family of direction or the family of plane is usually the permutation of the indices that are involved. Supposing you have a family, you have a Miller indices that is 1, 1, 0, and this indices represent a direction, then the family of that direction would be the permutation of these integers. So it can be 0, 1, 1 or 1, 0, 1, and all these permutations will constitute the family of 1, 1, 0 direction. So all these will constitute the family of 1, 1, 0 direction. However, when you consider the hexagonal unit cell, you see that 1, 0, 0 and 1, 1, 0, they try to have, or it seems that these two different directions are equivalent in nature. So when you consider just the Miller indices, in hexagonal close packing, the family moves beyond the permutation. So here the family is confined to the permutation of integers. In hexagonal close packing, so in cubic it is confined to the permutation of integers. In hexagonal close packing, this does not hold, and that is the reason why we introduce another indices and another term, another integer, and then your overall representation of the direction and the plane within the hexagonal close packing will require 4 integers. So it will be h, k, I, l, and this is referred to as the Miller-Bravais indices. So Miller-Bravais indices is when you have is exclusively for the hexagonal close packing, and this is because we have to introduce a new integer to represent a plane or the direction, because the permutation law or the rule that holds for the cubic cubic system will no longer hold for the hexagonal close packing system. So this is it has primarily to do with the symmetry of the unit cell, the symmetry of the crystal structure. However, we saw, based on the way the indices can be arranged in order to arrive at the family of the planes or the family of direction, the permutation does not hold for the hexagonal close pack system or the hexagonal unit cell, and that is the reason why we arrive at the Miller-Bravais indices. Now, the extra or the additional indices or the additional index or the additional integer can be calculated from the existing h and k using the relation minus of h plus k. So the additional term is nothing but the minus of h plus k. So this term, it points along this direction or the direction that we have seen. So this integer, so the additional integers will point along this direction. So this belongs to this direction. Now, when you want to talk about any plane or the direction, so this new indices is oriented in this way, and when you want to talk about any plane or any direction, the way to calculate the plane and a direction within the hexagonal unit cell is also the same. We consider the projection, we consider the reciprocal of, or rather we consider the intercept, we consider the reciprocal of the intercept in case of the plane, we consider the projection in case of the direction, and both we factorize it. The approach remains the same even for the hexagonal unit cell. However, those approaches will yield you just h value, k value, or rather let me use another color. So the conventional approach to identify or to represent the plane or the direction will yield you h value, k value, and the l value, and from these values you find the additional indices or the additional integer I using this relation here. So when you want to talk about and include it in this formulation and cumulatively express it as the Miller-Gravice integers. So what we are essentially doing is, when we move away from the cubic closed pack structure or cubic structure to the hexagonal structure, cubic unit cell to the hexagonal unit cell, we saw that the permutation of the integers which renders us the family of plane or the family of direction fails in the hexagonal structure. So in order to avoid that, we introduce a new integer and we represent that as I. Now I is identified from the h and k using this relation that is expressed here. Having done all this, now in order to identify an integers for a given plane or the direction, the approach remains more or less the same, or the approach remains the same. What we begin with for identifying a plane, we begin with considering the intercept the plane makes in the different principal axis. You take the reciprocal, and with that you identify h, k, and l, and from h and k you identify I. And similarly for the direction, you take the projections and then you factorize it and you identify h, k, and l value, and from that you identify the value for I. So the overall approach for identifying the direction and the plane will remain the same irrespective of the unit cell. But one we have to keep in mind when you are dealing with the hexagonal unit cell is that you need an additional integer, and this additional integer is calculated from the h and k values. So with this we will wind up this lecture. So far what we have seen is identifying the plane and the direction in a cubic structure or a cubic unit cell and the hexagonal unit cell. So we will build on our understanding of representing or describing the plane and the direction in both cubic and the hexagonal unit cell in the subsequent lecture. So let's see ourselves in the next lecture wherein we will try to put into use whatever we have learned in describing the plane and the direction in both the cubic unit cell and the hexagonal unit cell. So see ourselves in the next lecture. Goodbye.